So the next presentation is from a man called Tim Devine. Tim is creative technologist and now creative director at DT. I'm fortunate enough to share a building with DT and have seen some of Tim's work. I can guarantee you that it is some of the craziest, most mind-blowing stuff that you're ever likely to be fortunate enough to see, not to set the bar too high or unsuccessfully manage expectations. Tim will be presenting to you on kind of the crossover in some of his work as a practicing artist, media artist, and as a commercially driven creative technologist for one of Australia's largest and most successful digital agencies. So just while he gets set up, if you could just give a little warm welcome to Tim Devine.
So I put forward the idea of I really love the idea of this, the moments that come when you're creating things that you call the light bulb moment, that get called the light bulb moment, and it's as wonderful as it is. It's also kind of neglects the stuff that happens before that, and what this presentation is about. Cool. This presentation is about those moments that you encounter. And what leads up, what builds up to that moment. This is Charles Towns. He invented the laser, and he came up with the idea for a laser while sitting on a park bench in Washington, DC, looking at some flowers. And I think there's a little bit of irony. So basically this presentation is all about the idea of the process of turning a light on, or the process that leads up to those light bulb moments. Because I think I'll talk about a lot of different disciplines, a lot of different projects, a lot of different stuff that from different people that are just different processes. Because I think the more diverse our processes are, the more diverse our work is, the more diverse we can be, the better we are. I was working a couple of weeks ago with an artist in Oxford Street, and we were talking about how we really love process, and it really is that, as soon as a project is done, it's done, and you're on to the next process. So all we do is process, and if we don't enjoy the processes that we're in, then there's no point doing what we do. So to reiterate, this presentation will be about processes, sequences, and systems that reflect active and passive processes. So active processes being the processes that you go through when you're creating, when you're trying to ideate, and then passive processes, which are the processes that you go through peripheral to that, and I think it'll become more clear what a passive process is, but I think there's massive value in all the stuff that you do outside of the active ideation. Which leads me to the idea of constructive discontent, which is kind of this inherent thing that creatives go through to solve a problem and to really create. It's kind of a prerequisite for transformative ideas and stuff it could be called inspiration, it could be called all sorts of things, but I love the term constructive discontent. It's like, okay, so this is not quite right. What can we do to solve it? How can I solve it? What's interesting about it? There's sound on this one. Is there any sound coming out of this? Yeah. So this is an example of a process of a blue morph butterfly going its heart rate over 20 minutes. So those little awful kind of sounds that you hear, recorded with a laser during its metamorphosis. So when you think of a caterpillar going into its chrysalis and then coming out, you think it's a constant process of development. But actually, some guys came together and they were able to record the heartbeat of a caterpillar, and they realized that it only happened in short bursts of creation, which I thought was kind of interesting in terms of we're talking about when things start and process. A local guy, Ed LINACRE, I love the way that he thinks and who he is as a guy, and he won the James Dyson Award for Innovation in Product Design a few years ago, and he came up with an airdrop system which looked at the NAMIB beetle and used this idea of biomimicry, which is looking to nature and the systems in nature and to how you could use those to solve a problem. So he looked at a beetle that lived in the desert and said, okay, it survives, so where does it get water? There must be water in the air. So he made this thing called the airdrop system, which has a small solar panel, turns a small turbine, bringing the air from the desert down under the earth to be cooled and then irrigated through a drip feed water system. So a great example of biomimicry and how simple stuff, but knowing and looking at nature can lead to great things. Laura DEAKIN's Dishonest Pearls, so she's a jeweler in Munich, and I liked her work because of the way that she looks at, she works with materials. As a jeweler, she's very hands-on, and she really works with all the stuff she does. So she got some fake pearls, put them in this kind of specific kind of putty, and then put a scalpel around the outside and popped most of the pearl out, leaving the film inside the putty. So she created this kind of inverse pearl, and I think there's no way she would have arrived at that without experimenting and going through processes and understanding of materials. John Cleese is a big man to me, and he did a talk on creativity. It's on YouTube and it's great. And yeah, he says, there's one line in there that says, my work was more creative than the guy he was working with, simply because he was prepared to stick with the problem longer. And I think that's exactly it. It's like sitting in that anxiety that, you know, I've kind of got a problem solved and it's okay, it's pretty good, but just stick at it, keep doing it, and see what else comes up. It's kind of, I love that. It's a tough thing. It's really easy to just say, okay, that's pretty good, problem solved and walk away, but to sit at it and really really nail it is what he did so well. This guy, W.H. Auden, had a morning ritual where he would have speed and then work hard all day and then take barbiturates in SECONAL to go to sleep. And so his routine was kind of, you know, he talked about speed as the labor-saving device in the mental kitchen, and I just think it's, you know, I don't think I've intended to talk about drugs, but I like the idea of routine, and I love, it's so essential to me to have routine, and if that's taking speed and barbiturates, then so be it. I don't do that, so, yeah. And while I was preparing for the presentation, I got interested in the idea of mathematics as an interesting process, and this idea, and also an interesting kind of metaphor for light bulb moments. So this, like, you get to the solution through a very obvious process to a very obvious final finish light bulb moment. And Gödel, the interesting thing about Gödel in 1931, he came up with a theory that said that there is no end and we can't have a complete system for mathematics. So even though mathematics appears to be the most completable system we could ever have, it can't ever be completed. And I can't tell you why it won't be completed, but yeah, it's mathematics and other stuff, that music especially. It's interesting how things, how the processes work there. Anyway, moving on. Michelangelo's Roman Pieta was signed FACIEBAT, which means unfinished. So I don't know if anyone's actually seen that, but it's incredible. And this idea of just going at it, keep working, and then still this guy considers this it's not finished, you know. And he's got a lot of works which are called non finito, where he kind of leaves the stuff inside. So it's just he's constantly creating, constantly doing, and, you know, is happy to say, you know, he knows, he feels, he makes it, it's unfinished. I love the process of biohacking and grinding and reverse engineering, the idea of looking at what a huge multinational corporation has done with science or technology and going, we can do that, how can we do that? And reverse engineering that as a process of kind of trying to understand and then start another process once you've re-engineered the technology. Music is great. I find music was the first thing I studied outside of school, and I was shit at it, and that's probably why I'm here talking about the stuff I am. But I still think it always stuck with me as a kind of great template for you know, form in melody, abstract enjoyment. You know, it's purely abstract. It's ridiculous. Why do we love music? And it's through the anticipation of melody and rhythm and all that sort of stuff that we enjoy music, and so I think it's well worth a look at, and yeah, I love everything that music has to offer. One of my lecturers was telling me that he did a project This is an example of an absurd or harsh process where in London he went around with a friend and filmed his friend punching the artist in the face at their opening. So he'd go up and find the artist, and then he'd go up and punch them and film it. And it's fucked. Like, it's not. Yeah, but it's, and then what's the result? You know, it's kind of a bizarre story, but yeah, it's the same sort of thing with a German artist, Julius von Bismarck. He had a residency at the Large Hadron Collider in CERN, and one of his experiments was to have coffee with the scientists in pure darkness, without photons, which is kind of cheeky and ridiculous. But there was, you know, coffee in the dark with a scientist and an artist, and as a way to kind of just, you know, offset or throw themselves out of a context without any clear idea what might come out of it. You know, what would a silence be like? If, you know, all this stuff. It's he's well worth looking at if you don't know any of his work. He's got some shit work, but he's got some really good work as well. And now I'm going to talk. I didn't want my presentation to be too much about the work that I do, but I felt like it's fair enough that I talk about it because I've talked about other people's work. So this is an art project I did last year, and it was a collaboration, and kind of it was a lot of things. And I think it's also a good example of the first work I've really actually done, which didn't have any clear goals, any clear desire for any real outcome. It was really about collaboration, experimentation, absurdity, and risk, and all sorts of stuff. So the idea was that you wear high-powered contact lenses, custom contact lenses, so to allow you to focus on the back of your eyelid, and then you use laser projectors to project on the back of the eyelid so that you can see stereoscopic content in your closed eyes, in your head. So I used high-definition micro projections, which you can see. It came up okay, but they were super, super small, like super high def, like the size of a stamp at full HD. So the pixel size was way, way higher than Apple's, and it was dangerous. Like it was a really kind of they were laser projectors, and on the projectors themselves, it said not. It had not only was it a sticker, it was actually in the plastic with a cross through the eye and the projector pointing at the eye. So there was huge risk involved, and I got Mick, a writer, Antoinette J. Citizen, an artist, Tara Cook, an artist, Kid Webster, an artist, and Dave Burrows is an artist, to all make content for this and get their lenses made from at the optometrist and participate in this experiment, which we did in one day at a studio down in South Melbourne. What I wanted to do, I'm not a product designer, but I thought as much as I could about it, and I came up with the idea of the form would be a kind of reflection of the darkness inside. So I wanted to create a very dark sort of sphere, sort of primitive form, and so I used a 3D printer to print it all out and then sand it for weekend after weekend to try and get it to a point where it was really kind of smooth and didn't look like it was 3D printed, and was kind of an object that you could drop if you got scared or the lasers hurt your eyes. Yeah, so the process, oh, here we go, oops. Okay, yeah, so it required a lot of testing, you know, like once I looked at the projector and it was burnt into my eye for it's probably still there, I've probably just habituated to it, but it literally, it was so vivid, you know, when you look at a TV, you've probably done those experiments where you look at something and then you close your eye and you see George Bush or something. Yeah, but this was vivid as hell, like it was so sharp on my retina, and I was really worried. And coming on the day where we filmed, I wanted it to be a sort of super clean scene, so I wanted just the artist to experience just the work. I was thinking we could do it in another context, but I wanted it to just be each artist experiencing everybody else's work, so we all experienced 6 works on the day, and yeah. And we filmed it and documented it for a later on exhibition. Yeah. The risk, class 2 lasers, which aren't the most powerful lasers, but they're still risky. And what was kind of tough for me, it was one of the most stressful days ever, because you can tell people, don't open your eyes. You're safe if you don't open your eyes. And One of the artists got the contact lens stuck behind his eye, and we were numbers away from calling the optometrist to come and get it out, and it was disgusting. And then one of the other artists opened her eyes and then said she had a burnt spot on the top of her retina, and so of course that's just, I feel responsible for that, even though I can't be responsible for it because she opened her eyes. And anyway, she went to the optometrist on the Monday and she had an eyelash stuck in her eye, which was fucking ridiculous. Like, what are the chances of that? Yeah, so sticking fingers in your eyes. There's some people with glasses. I don't know if you've tried contacts, but it's ridiculous. And one of the outcomes for this, the greatest outcomes for this was the sensation of wearing these contact lenses that allowed you to focus on your nose. So your area of focus was this, like it was so short, and everything was just this beautiful Gaussian, you know. And so that will lead to other work that I'll explore as a further exploration, because that, as an experience, was insane. Like, everyone was grossed out by the hairs on their nose. And yeah, I like working with, I'd like to work further with the contact lenses. And you had to wear these correcting glasses so that you could kind of see, but they were kind of useless. So you ended up looking at the computer screen this close so you could still focus. And that was the first light. So that was an intense moment to actually do it. This one is a stupid statement, but I think you'll get the point when I explain it. So what I'm interested in here is that I went to this exhibition in Austria a couple of years ago, and I was with a couple of guys, and we're all media artists, and we're all kind of interested in this stuff, and they'd walk into the room, and there's a blind robot, by the way, sorry. So the robot's blind, and it's doing what a blind person does. And they didn't experience it, and I felt like, how can it's one of those things, and you're experiencing what they experienced, so you're watching someone experience something, and kind of going, it's maybe a bit different for you, but they just saw it and went, okay, I get it, I know what that's like, and then didn't experience it. But I think you push yourself, even though you're standing in a room of kids and people and strangers, and you kind of interactive art asks something of you, you should always try and just line up a little bit longer, or just do it, do what it is. And if the artist asks you to look like an idiot, then talk to the artist and go, what the fuck was that about? I think you need to experience stuff, otherwise you're just passive and you're not getting the full story somehow. Yeah, so it does interactive art exist if no one interacts with it. Pretty straightforward. What's the time, like, Luke? Okay, cool. So this was a project I did for Honda at the Sydney Festival a few years ago. So the last project was purely exploration, indulgent artist stuff, and this was commercial creative director at DT stuff. And so the idea was to create a people-powered persistence of vision spinning cup volumetric screen thing. It's been a while since I've said what it actually was, but they wanted to do something in Fed Square, in Hyde Park. They wanted to kind of be part of the festival. They were sponsoring the festival gardens. They wanted to be a part of the festival somehow. They wanted to show joy through clever thinking and technology. So that was a kind of a cool brief, and so I went away and I had to think about it. And I don't know why I drew a lobster. I drew some totem tennis, and my illustration's pretty bad, but it doesn't matter. It was kind of just getting it out there and kind of just putting as much stuff in there. And there's a lot of shitty ideas in here, and some fun ideas, but I thought a lot about it. And I apologize if you're kind of really aware of this process, or if this is kind of like what your everyday is, because this is every chance it is. But I love the idea that, like, it took a while for me to get this. You know, you work, when you have a brief, or when you're trying to come up with an idea, just go hard at it, and then do whatever you want. You know, go and do whatever you want. And I went to bed, and I woke up at 3 in the morning and had the idea of combining a spinning cup with one of those LED clocks, and just thought, all right, okay, that'll kind of work. Does everyone know the LED clocks? I guess you do. It goes really fast, so you can see numbers with LEDs, and it's called persistence of vision. So I went back to work the next day, and I put together a little sketch with a terrible car, and figured out that it should work, and sold it into the Sydney Festival, sold it into Honda, with this piece of paper. This was a dream sell-in. It was just us sitting, talking to people. And then we went and tested it.
I'm going to film you guys.
So it was already sold in. So and we found a park in Kew if you want to go and find one of these ridiculously dangerous things. Because at one point in this video, I almost fall out of the cup trying to video it. And it doesn't look like you're going fast, but you feel like you're going really fast. So in the background there is an LED strip and my computer. And that's the account manager, so he was dedicated. So yeah, it's right about now I almost fall out of the cup, and that was one of the things I wish I'd put more into it. Once you start spinning, you're kind of in the experience. You can't just walk away. You have to slow it down. So. Yeah, so we started with the Honda logo as a kind of test thing, and Brett couldn't drive after this. We kept on doing it. And that was exactly how fast we were going. We felt like we were going really fast. And anyway, so it was a fun experience, and that was kind of at the Sydney Festival and what we did. So as an interesting thing, they talk about experience of process. Could you turn the sound down for this next bit? It's got NAF music in it, and yeah, this is just the making of, and just while I talk over it. It was interesting. What we wanted to do with this is like the content was sort of like a neon garden. We wanted people to go to Hyde Park and have an experience where they saw a spinning cup and they know what that is. So it's kind of you walk up, you sit in the spinning cup, you know what experience you're going to get, but we wanted people to do that, and then once they start spinning, to have this slow realization that, oh shit, oh wow, like this thing, and then take that experience and then go away and tell someone and go, so I went to Hyde Park and I sat in this cup, and then all of a sudden I start spinning, and then there's this neon garden that just appeared around me, and it's a ridiculous story by the end of it, and I kind of enjoyed that about it. I thought that was a nice part of the process and of experiencing that. And the second last slide is like I'm a big advocate for being critical of any kind of experience that you have, and making sure that you might have the wrong opinion, but be critical of your criticisms as well. Just just engage, just talk about and think about work and what people do. And the example of the 3D printed gun. It's very easy to have an opinion on that. There's stuff that's difficult to have an opinion because you might not really know it, and you might not know much about it. But be thinking, be always kind of engaging with it. The first time someone said to me, it was in ACME, and they said before we went into the exhibition, they're like, make sure you think about everything you experience here. And then since that day, so it was 15 years ago, I've always sort of just gone in and gone, okay, I don't get it, I kind of like this, I don't like this is good, this is interesting, whatever. It's such a valuable experience, because when you're constantly critiquing your own work and others' work and your ideation, and you'll always end up better. And I wanted to put a Metallica slide in, so that's my last slide. So, yeah, how's that?
MakerBot was famously started at a hackerspace in New York. What can we do in Australia to encourage more hackerspaces, and what is the scene like here, and how can we make it better?
I think so I started Media Lab Melbourne with a few people in Collingwood, and I think hackerspaces generally just tend to kind of build out of the curiosity of people wanting to share skills, share technology, share spaces and tools and things like that. This Melbourne Hacker Group is amazing. They kind of just try and solve community problems, from what I gather, and also make electronic t-shirt guitars and stuff. But it's all kind of in education and stuff like that. And I think we've done some at DT. We've done some hackathons at DT. I think there's a lot of ways you can run hackathons and hacker groups. But it really relies on the community and the kind of, the desire to do that and be kind of engaged in it and yeah.
Where does that community exist in Melbourne?
Where does
it exist? Where does it gravitate towards? Is it online or is it at a particular space?
Yeah, I don't know. You know,
Yeah.
like I know Media Lab Melbourne does a talk at the Docklands Library every month, and that's kind of a place where they meet. And then I know Hack Melbourne has you can become a member of that, and you can go and use the tools, and they do workshops there and education. And I think they designed the Lifix lightbulb. I think that's some guys that are involved in that came up with that. So I may be wrong, but that's from what I think. Yeah, and of course stuff exists online. It's it's whether it's in Melbourne or not, I don't know. Yeah. I'm not the biggest hacker really, but I see the value in it.
Anybody else? Something that fascinates me about your work, Tim, is that it's not always clear where you're being an artist and where you're being a creative director of a commercial agency.
Sure.
How do those two coexist?
Yeah, I touched on the idea of like a goalless project, and you can't have a goalless project in a commercial context. You need to know the outcome, otherwise you're fooling everyone. So kind of, I love the ability to have an artistic practice outside of DT so that I can get it out, and I encourage the entire team at work to go and do other projects, and whether they're goalless or not, it doesn't matter, just do something outside of the context of advertising and in the agency, and make and create and fail and all that sort of stuff. That's how I do it, and that's how I want my team to work as well.
Do your clients see the value in that? As in, do you think clients occasionally come to you to work with your team because you allow space for that kind of process, or is the truly disruptive ideas that you have, are they a byproduct of the process, or are they the goal of the process itself? That's
a confusing question. Sorry. I think clients are all about relationships. The Honda trope was sold in because Brett had such a great relationship with the Honda, and I also had done some work with them as well. So it's I think that's what is a massive part of selling. Like how the fuck do you sell in something so absurd? No one's experienced that, and especially a marketing manager. You're talking about these things to marketing managers and the people that you're talking to. So. I think being able to sell in your work in a really simple way is key, especially when it's a super complex and kind of unknown thing. It's a new media. It's not on a screen. It's not in audio or anything. Or on a phone or something. It's new. So yeah.
Anyone got less convoluted questions than mine? All right, okay, if no one wants to jump in, I'll maybe say thanks once more to Tim. We can have a minute spare before we get back to the presentation we were supposed to just have, so sorry about that. All right, thanks very much, Tim.